In order to increase demand on routes, there are several ways to do this. To demonstrate this, we're going to use FSCharter Air and we're going to build a network. To start this network, I've built two routes, one from EGCC to EGPH and one from EGPH to EGCC. You'll notice in the dock they're currently shown as disabled. This is because I don't have slots at either destination. So the first thing we need to do is buy some slots. To purchase a slot, I navigate to the Base Operations menu, select EGCC, Agreements, and sign a new agreement. In this case, my aircraft is 1,664 square meters of footprint. This means it will fit into a domestic medium slot, so I'm going to take that, give it a name, and sign. Likewise, I also need a slot at Edinburgh, but because I don't have a base of operations there, I need to use the airport menu and choose Edinburgh. I choose the agreement, sign a new one, medium domestic, call it test, and sign. Now that I have those two slots, the route has become active. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm only using ticket prices of 0 because that ensures we have the maximum amount of demand for each route. We can currently see 48 people want to go from Edinburgh to Manchester and 20 want to go from Manchester to Edinburgh. If at any point we want to double check this, we can refresh and we'll see the latest numbers. As the demand on these routes is quite low, one way we can increase it is with a passenger services building. To use these, go to the Base Operations, choose EGPH, and we have new buildings. The three different types of passenger services buildings have different route completion, 10 nautical miles for the small, 25 for the medium, and 50 for the large. In this case, we want to see how many airports are in the 50-mile zone, so the way to check this is to go to the demand lens, search for demand from EGPH to EGCC, and choose a radius of 50. We then click search, and we can see that the demand simply to EGCC is 7, but there's also quite a lot of demand wanting to go to the area around. That means, in this case, a passenger services building of 50 nautical miles would be of benefit at EGCC. So, we go back to the Base Operations, choose EGCC, construct a new building, and we'll purchase a large passenger services building. Now that we've done that, we can refresh the demand on the routes. EGCC to EGPH is unaffected because the passenger services only affects arrivals. The EGPH to EGCC route should be affected. Now that we've refreshed the demand, we can see that there's 227 people want to go from Edinburgh to Manchester. To increase the demand on this route, we can also buy a passenger services building in Edinburgh. Again, we will check whether it's worth it. We'll change from EGCC at a 0 radius to EGPH at a 50 radius. We can see that here the demand is not as significant. Passengers in V2 have a ground transfer radius based on their class. First class passengers will travel smaller distances to get to the airport than economy class passengers. On this basis, we can set the EGCC radius to also be 50 to give us an idea of how many passengers in the surrounding area will be sucked into Manchester for onwards travel. We can now see that between EGCC in a 50-mile radius and EGPH in a 50-mile radius, there's actually a lot of traffic waiting to be moved. This means that a passenger services building at EGPH will be worth it. So, we go to the Base Operations, to EGPH, and we buy a large passenger services building. Now we can check the routes. We can see 227 for EGPH to EGCC. We can refresh that again, and 20 has now increased to 118. So using those two passenger services buildings, we've significantly increased the demand on the system. The next way to increase demand is to add more routes into the network. This gives passengers more destinations and ensures you have more passengers wanting to use your network as they can reach their final destination. In this case, we're going to add a route into Dublin. The new routes are created, but they're currently set as disabled. This is because even though we have a domestic slot at Manchester, this is an international flight because it's leaving UK. Therefore, we need to buy two new slots, one at Manchester, which will be a medium international, and one in Dublin, which will also be a medium international. Now that we've added the slots, we can see that we've got 308 passengers wanting to go to Manchester, 5 passengers wanting to go to Dublin, and we've already got the two routes. We can refresh these to see if the demand is updated. It doesn't always, it depends on the number of passengers and where they want to go. In this case, refreshing shows that there's no additional demand. We can also see where the passengers want to go by previewing and checking with the aircraft we plan on flying. We can see that the majority of the passengers want to go directly to airports around Manchester, and we can also see the suck radius, which is showing where the passengers are coming from. To increase demand even further, we can add an additional route. This time we're going to add one to Amsterdam. The new routes are disabled, however in this case we already have a medium international at Manchester, so the only slot that's missing is in Amsterdam, where we need a medium international as well. Using the airport lens into Amsterdam, agreements, a medium international with a test name, we now have those routes toggled on as well. We can see 290 people wanting to go to Manchester, 5 wanting to go to Amsterdam, and the previous demand. We can refresh all of the routes and see how demand now looks. 291 stays the same, as does 5 because these are new routes. EIDW increases slightly, and EGCC stays the same. EGPH increases slightly, and EGCC stays the same. The reason they increase is because you now have passengers in Amsterdam who want to travel to both Dublin and to Edinburgh. Likewise, you have passengers in Edinburgh who now want to travel to Dublin and Amsterdam, and passengers in Dublin wanting to travel to Edinburgh and Amsterdam. The more destinations you add, the more passengers have choice and the more places they connect to. We already have a route from EGLL to JFK. We can now create one route between Manchester to London, and that will link up the JFK route as well. Again, we need to buy slots, and again, these are just medium domestic slots. We already have one at Manchester, so we only need one in London, medium domestic, and test. We now have a route network that covers 4 locations: Edinburgh, Dublin, Amsterdam, and JFK. It also has a hub at Manchester and a transfer at London. Now if we refresh all of the routes, we can see updated demand. 798 stays the same because it's just been created. 1.24 stays the same. That increases significantly. This will stay the same. This increases marginally. And that one increases as well. We can also see that the route to JFK goes down slightly, and the route from JFK to EGLL increases slightly. Again, the reason for the changes is because we're now adding more destinations. The only thing that needs to be considered when creating a route network is that passengers will only board your flight if they can get to their destination airport in 3 hops. Doing that ignores the effect of passenger services, So the passenger services in Edinburgh still counts as just one leg because the last leg is automatically completed, i.e. landing in Edinburgh and using a passenger service to automatically distribute doesn't count as an additional leg. What this means is that each of these destinations can get to Manchester in one hop, to London in 2 hops, and to JFK in a 3rd hop. That means that every currently served airport on this network can be reached in 3 hops. We can also see that this Manchester to London route and the London to Manchester route have a significant amount of demand compared to the others. The reason for this is that all flights from Amsterdam to Manchester, Edinburgh to Manchester, and Dublin to Manchester will all gather in Manchester Airport, waiting for onward transfer to London, so that they can either go to London itself or have onwards transfer to JFK. This means that this route here now becomes a shuttle between one hub and another smaller hub. Within FSCharter v2, hub and spoke models do lend themselves to better networks. However, it is not mandatory for you to follow any particular network design. The other way to increase demand would be to partner with another company. In this case, we could partner with a company who operates out of Amsterdam, or even better would be a partner operating out of JFK. This would mean that all of our flights from London to JFK become a shuttle run, or all of the flights from Manchester to Amsterdam become a shuttle run, and then those passengers move along the partner's network. This increases the number of destinations that can be visited by each passenger, and therefore increases the demand on each of these routes. You can also see that demand for what's called in FSCharter last legs, i.e. flights from the hub to the spokes, have lower demand than the flights from the spokes to the hubs. This will change as more and more flights are flown, because each time you fly from Edinburgh to Manchester or Dublin to Manchester, you'll be dropping off passengers who want to go to Amsterdam, and therefore the Manchester to Amsterdam route will start to increase. You can refresh the demand after any flight to see how many additional passengers you have dropped off. You can also use the demand lens, set it up to be filtered on your airport with no radius and no destination, and set to internal collaborative. In this case there is no demand available, but every time you fly a flight and drop off passengers at EGCC, you would see internal collaboration is building there, waiting to be delivered to London, Amsterdam, Dublin, Edinburgh, or JFK. You can use these tips to grow your network in a more strategic method. Use partnerships, passenger services, and routes to areas where you know there is demand to increase the overall demand in your network. Just remember to always follow the 3 legs rule.